Welcome to the McAllister Report. We join John McAllister, top football evaluator, as he shares wisdom and interviews coaches and athletes from around the country. Enjoy today's podcast.
Hello, I'm John McAllister, and I have the John McAllister Report. And today I'm so honored, grateful, excited to talk with Jerry Snodgrass. Jerry Snodgrass has a history in coaching basketball, being an athletics director, working on the OHSAA board, and then being the OHSAA Executive Commissioner for a while. And he has a wealth of knowledge about all types of things in athletics. And today he's going to talk a little bit about leadership, because he actually teaches a leadership class. Talks about being an assistant AD. He talks about, a little bit about football with spring practice, but with high school teams, and just a lot of insight. And Jerry's always interesting to talk to. And like I say, I respect him. And we go back many, many years to Upper Sandusky, high school, where we both attended, although I'm a little bit older than he is. So if you'd sit back and enjoy my conversation with Jerry Snodgrass. Jerry Snodgrass, it's so neat to see you, and you're a return guest for me, and I really appreciate you being on my program.
Well, John, I love what you do, especially in the way you do it, promoting what you do in all the right ways. It's not for any kind of gain for you. It's to promote kids. I really like that.
Oh, I try. I promote kids as much as I can. In fact, I'm working on a boy from Mohawk, a pole vaulter. He's vaulted 16 feet, and he's number one in his state. And I'm trying to get a hold of him and see if he'll be on my show. Also, I've had some women or girls on too, and I'll do that anytime.
Good.
I don't know. I've read a paper about it. She's a softball player up in Evergreen, maybe, or something. She's going to Penn State. I mean,
wow,
that's good. Well, Mr. Snodgrass, so tell me, you can't sit still. You got to be doing something. And I heard you're working with it's not a junior college up in Toledo, is it?
No, it's actually in Fremont, but it's Terra. We always knew it as Terra Tech, but it's Terra State Junior College, or Terra State College now, community college.
So what are you doing, Jerry?
Actually, it's a couple different things. I work in their academic advising, which I dearly love. I'm actually called a success coach, and I work with, I'll call them at risk to some degree, kids that are struggling in school. And I do have a counseling degree, so that really has came in handy in coaching too, as you well know, but that comes in handy. But kind of got pulled into helping in their athletic department as well. I didn't really want to, but I know there are people there. And like a lot of community colleges, they have added sports, and they're up to, in the spring, they have men's and women's golf and baseball, and they have men's basketball and women's basketball, volleyball, which has been very successful. And they're growing. They're growing considerably in the athletic world.
Heard Braxton Miller and some investors have bought and have purchased Urbana University, the whole facility, and going to start a junior college program.
I heard.
I've always hoped that a place like in Fremont there we're talking about, that they would do the same thing and have football, because Ohio needs a junior college football program.
Well, there is one. Guess there is one.
Down by Athens.
Hockey. I think it may still be called Hocking Tech, but yeah. I was surprised at that. Somebody told me they have 110 or so kids on their roster.
Yeah, it's a good deal. So what are you doing then with the athletics at? with Terra?
Primarily, I'm involved in the academic side of it.
Okay.
Today alone, doing some academic reports to, for eligibility purposes. And it was a little bit of an adjustment to learn junior college academic eligibility rules. They're part of it's the NJ, National Junior College Athletic Association, NJCAA, and many of the rules actually, parallel the NCAA.
That's really good. Okay, let's go to a second thing, and I know this is one of your strengths, but let's go. I heard, and I forget who told me, that you're doing leadership programs at different high schools and even with leagues, at league meetings and things like that. Let's talk about that program. What's involved with leadership programs at those schools?
Well, I'm going to go back for just a second and say that, one of the reasons that I went to the OHSAA, and I think one of the things I was looking so forward to, was making a difference for, you go from Findlay High School to being an employee of the OHSAA. And at one time, I was administrating 13 or 14 sports. That's a lot of kids, statewide. And I felt strongly that I could make an impact because, as we know in our business of athletics, sooner or later, everybody hangs up the cleats. Everybody hangs up the shoes. And sooner or later, what you do with the things you've been taught, we talk about athletics being educational. Well, it develops leadership. So I just cherished the opportunity to do that when I was at the OHSAA. Some of the programs I was able to create, people kind of stayed out of my way. Now I evolved to that where I'm not there anymore. And I say to myself, it's what I do. It's what I believe in, that we need to develop leadership skills in our kids. One of the things I tell them, if you don't do it, who will? And I always tell them, my grandkids need you to be good leaders.
Right.
So, I teach a leadership and ethics course at Ohio University in their master's program. So it's kind of a natural extension for me to take a lot of those theories, philosophies, real life experiences, and teach that, impart that to kids at the high school level. I just recently spoke to 400 kids at the student athletes at the Sandusky Bay Conference, leadership conference, put on that all the athletic directors did it, but Mr. Greenslade, Clyde really spearheaded it, and it was phenomenal. I was its keynote speaker. And I recently spoke to the Southwest Buckeye Conference down in the Monroe, Eaton, that area. I've got 2 coming up. So it's been a great opportunity to use life experiences. I mean, they all want to hear your old stories, hey, when I was a kid or anything like that. But then again, when you can relate some of your experiences to how you develop leadership, especially when it comes to, somebody asked me recently, what was the most impact? What did you learn that was the most impactful thing in your leadership? And I said, what did I learn? I learned from failure. I learned from things I might have taken a risk and failed at. It didn't cause the world to catch on fire, but you learn from that. And then so I can use that to talk about taking risks to be a better leader.
Well, I think that as I'm listening to you, and I think your leadership is huge because you've been there. You've been a teacher, you've been a high school guidance counselor, you've been a basketball coach, assistant basketball coach, an athletics director. So you've been there. I think that obviously you've gained respect, and you're still pretty young yet, that you can still relate. Now, I would think you'd have a harder time with high school students because of the age a little bit, but it's harder to relate to those guys. But you being human and understanding what it takes to relate to kids helps you an awful lot, I would think. I don't think I can relate to kids through my football business. And I think, now see, for me, that I have something they'd like to have. I'm on Twitter. And I can help them. Maybe not as much as I used to when I was really grinding on this. But I think that let's go to leadership because it's such a great subject. I mean, we need it. Our kids need some guidance.
They really do. And, there may become a day where I can't relate to them as much. And I think I'll see that.
Right.
I think a lot of coaches, you ever notice that? I think a lot of coaches, I mean, it's an extension. I mean, good coaches are good leaders and they impart those same skills. But it's like a coach knowing when his or her time is up.
Right.
I think I'll know when that time is, but I think that's what really tests us to stay involved and listen. And I did that when I was at the OHSAA. I got criticized by that. I still laugh at that to this day, that I started a program called the Golden Megaphone. And it was about student sections. And student sections didn't used to exist. Well, when it started, they became organized. But here was the key. Me and a couple staff members, we worked very hard to realize that at student sections, who always sits in the front couple rows? Seniors.
Yeah.
Then junior. I mean, that's a must.
Yeah.
They have their own social media accounts. So we thought, why can't we tap into that and use that as a leadership development and at the same time helping them with sportsmanship, because that's part of leadership. And it was, we did get some national recognition for it. We turned that into we challenged every single school in the state of Ohio to have a theme night for one of their Golden Megaphone nights, one of their game nights. And we ended up getting recognized nationally by the National VFW and some other things because we did it for the military. But my point with that is that I would go into one of these places at a school. I would get invited. Some of my staff would at times on a Friday night. I remember going to Milford High School down around Cincinnati. Yeah. I walked in. They had invited me to come down, as part of the Golden Megaphone. And I walk in and every single kid, there must have been 300 kids in their student section, all had a T-shirt on with my picture on the front. And it said the Mr. Snodgrass Fan Club. Now, on one hand, that wasn't an egotistical thing.
That's huge.
I got a letter from their principal afterwards, then the days following, who said, what you have done is you've tied that organization, the OHSAA, to our students.
Right.
And that can only be helpful. Well, it was just a matter of creating leadership opportunities. So
Holtz once said the successful people are the ones that do things a normal person wouldn't do.
Yes.
It's true.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, because I wrote it in my notes down here with the leadership, and I think this is really important because you're going another way, another branch here. Tell me your program that you're working with in Toledo. That you can, Coach.
Yeah.
You can.
Thank you for asking that, because my son, who passed away a couple of years ago, his friends started a foundation called the Do It for 19 Foundation. 19 was his high school football number. Okay. And my son was an all-state football kicker, and he always used to tell me that kickers were football players too, back in the day when, they weren't just, he played another position, but he was just a kicker. But we give money to a group in Columbus called the OSU, Ohio State University, Life Sports. And it's all centered around teaching life skills. Yeah, they play sports. They get to use the fields and things like that at Ohio State. But they bus kids in from the inner city and teach them life skills through sport participation. And when I spent the day with them the first time, I literally was in tears for what they do. And here's the concept. The whole concept is these kids in inner cities, we're pricing them out.
Right.
Because everything's travel sports. And what young kid between the ages of 8 and 13 are going to tell somebody we can't afford to do it? They're not going to do that. So this provides opportunities. So given that, and I don't live in Columbus anymore, or live there. I don't work there. I love what they do, but I wanted to carry that somewhere else. And it effectively works, one, on student youth leadership, but life skills. It's an answer to youth violence. It's an answer to, we always say what good sport does for kids. Well, we're losing them. So I reached out to the mayor of Toledo, Wade Capsicavage, and through his administrative assistant, I thought, I'll take a stretch at this and see if we can't bring a program like that to inner city Toledo. Well, I reached out to Dennis Hobson and some other people that I do know, and can we do this with a kind of a target date of 2024? Because it takes a while to plan it. But using maybe University of Toledo at their facilities, I learned that a lot of the high schools in Toledo, especially the non-publics, they need volunteer hours for their kids, seniors. So to do this in a kind of a leadership capacity, and lo and behold, I got a call back or an email back from the administrative assistant and said the mayor would like to meet with you. So I met with him about a month ago. He's very, very interested. I walked out that day and he said, I will be back in touch with you to talk again. So I'm looking forward to, I presented a plan to him, and budgeting is, a little bit, but they feed the kids while they're there and all that. So it's growing. The opportunity is growing, and I hope it takes flight.
So the base is OSU Life Sports?
Yeah, it is.
That's the pattern, or that's, you look at if somebody Googled OSU Life Sports,
they would find it without a doubt.
Find it, and they'd find information about it.
Yes, and they have a research doctor, Dr. Dawn Butcher, whose husband happens to be the girls golf coach at Dublin, Scioto, I think it is. He'd kill me for not having the right name of which Dublin he's at. But anyhow, she's a good research professor that heads it up. She has written a curriculum for it. I mean, so every single day they have what they call chalk talk with the kids in separate groups. And chalk talk is not about X's and O's. It's about life skills. And they feed them. In some cases, that's the best meal they get for the day. And they talk about all these. They teach them all kinds of life skills, but that's what it's patterned after. And I'd like to use their curriculum. That's part of the budget. Yeah. But if I can't use it, and they're willing to sell it to me, but, as an extension of that. But either way, I think if we have to, we can develop our own curriculum. I'm not concerned about that.
And you're helping a lot of kids. An alternative to violence.
I strongly believe with what's going on in in the inner city of Toledo, that it would benefit tremendously. It would make an impact.
Always the idea that, when kids are transferring schools and doing these kinds of things, if you can make your program attractive enough, then you'll keep them.
Yes.
I think that if you can make a program like that you're talking about with, I don't know, supposedly you're not supposed to use inner city anymore. I do. And I hope
I do.
And I think it's much needed.
Yeah. And, too,
Cleveland is doing something like that.
They are. I see
they're doing a really good job.
Yeah, and they just partnered with a basketball organization to develop youth basketball in the city. And I know, there's the side of, they want to develop NBA players. Yeah, right. No. They're not going to be. I mean, how many make the NBA? No, they want to teach them the power of what sport can do, and how it can help with some of the crises that we have.
Help people get along.
Yes.
Get along. I think sometimes if the older people would stay out of it, kids would get along a lot better. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes.
I read that not too long ago where, back in our day, I'll use that term again, but, in our day where you played on a playground, you played where you could match. Your parents were never there.
Yeah, I know.
Everything is being done in front of the parents. And I'm not sure how beneficial that really is. I don't take that away from parent interest. Hey, I'm guilty. I go to my grandkids' stuff. I mean, I wouldn't miss it. But at the same time, I wonder how much more he would and she would learn if they were just doing it on their own with a coach.
I think there's a lot to be said about that.
Right.
Really, sure, Jerry. That's really good. So a couple more. Tell me, this is just your opinion, and I have mine. If you look at Twitter, what about spring football here in Ohio? Have you touched base with that at all? Have you been asked about that at all?
Oh, probably a couple times a day. You know, not a popular answer when I say this, but I don't think it's necessary for high school and for high school kids. Do I see why college coaches want it? Of course I do. I do. I used to use something Henry Zaborniak always told me. For the longest time, when everybody wanted more, and more, if you look on an annual basis, Ohio ranks about 4th or 5th every year in the number of NFL players on rosters that are from Ohio. They rank 4th or 5th in the number of players from Ohio that are on Division I full ride scholarships in football, grant aids. And like a lot of times we would be compared to, like, no offense, but like an Indiana or some Minnesota, something like that. And, you know, Henry would always say, "Oh, so I get it. You want us to be like Indiana. You want us to be like Minnesota." Could we always get better? Yeah. But I think we can focus on that in other ways. I do understand why college coaches want it. But I just don't know in today's world if we need more for the bulk of all kids that play football.
I think that's your answer right there is really important. You know, they're going to get scholarships for about 120, 118 kids every year, football scholarships. That's only 118.
Right.
And, you know, to spend, to me, it's ridiculous. It doesn't, you know, the money you spend, you can't get enough coaches now to coach football. We know we have to have parents come in and people in the community come, lay coaches. Just think if you'd ask them to work 2 or more weeks, and I think everything's fine. I think they'll get it ironed out. You know, I do know that I think that Ohio high school football spends more time than Division III football.
Yeah, I agree.
Guys working and stuff like that.
You know, the residual effect of that, as you just mentioned. I mean, you know, from people that are on the outside don't necessarily see this, but when you're asking a high school coach or his staff to do more and more, ultimately they're going to want to be paid more. Yeah. And even there's only so much, you know, that pay can compensate. Free time or your own time is worth something. And I've never seen, I don't have anything analytical to back this up, but I don't think I've ever seen a year where there have been more head basketball, head football coaching openings than I've seen this year. I just,
right.
I have nothing to, you know, compare it.
Central Ohio, look at those guys. Losing good coaches.
Yes, and that's a concern. I think that's a real concern.
Well, Coach Snodgrass, Mr. Snodgrass, Jerry Snodgrass, a man of a lot of different hats. I appreciate you being on today.
I appreciate it unbelievably, John.
It's just fun to visit and learn some of the insides of what goes on. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.